Hey everybody, how's it going out there? Whenever you're watching this, morning, afternoon, middle of the night. My name is Adam Milnor. I'm with the National Park Service, and I'm pleased today to be presenting as part of the Borderlands Forum. Today we're going to be talking about advancing conservation and recreation along the Borderlands, with a focus on one of our National Park Service programs and some of the projects we are working on in several communities in our region. So we're going to be posting this presentation on May 10th. And then we're going to follow that with a live question and answer session on May 13th in the afternoon there. So we'll get started. My name is Adam Milnor. I'm a community planner with the program I mentioned, Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance. I live in Tucson, Arizona. Lucky to live in the West University neighborhood right downtown. I have lived in this part of the world for 5.5 years, still a relative newcomer, but definitely consider myself a resident of the Borderlands. That's me and my 18-month-old daughter Eloise there hiking around in the Tucson mountains. She is a budding ornithologist and ecologist, hopefully. We'll see. I have worked for the National Park Service for 4 years. Prior to that, I worked for the Bureau of Land Management in their Southeast Arizona Gila district, and also up in Oregon. I am an Arizona State University grad, and I've been bouncing around the state for quite a while. So I work in a program, while my office is in Tucson, I work on projects throughout the state of Arizona. We're going to talk more about that here shortly. So kind of the order of things in the presentation here, we're kind of shooting for 15-20 minutes. I'll look at the National Park Service along the Borderlands, protected sites and partner programs. And then we're going to talk through a few project examples just to give you a flavor of fun stuff that's going on out there. You know, we certainly live in challenging times and a lot of uncertainty, but, you know, we see people collaborating and working together in partnership to make a lot of great things happen. So I think that's the intent here in the Borderlands Forum, to share some of those stories. Today, I'll be talking about a project in Nogales with the Zero S Trace movement in Monte Carlo Trails Park, a project in Ajo, and then Redington Pass, which is right outside of Tucson. After that, I'm going to share a few thoughts on successful collaboration, especially in our neck of the woods and our time and place. And then I'm going to give a brief rundown on how your project, your organization might secure the assistance of the Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance Program. So first, let's start with kind of the National Park Service and our mission. I think you know, a fair number of folks are familiar with it. You know, we preserve unimpaired the natural and cultural resources and values of the national park system. So all the sites, the parks, the monuments, historic sites, and we preserve those for this and future generations for a variety of reasons. You know, the second part of the National Park Service mission might be a little bit less familiar to folks. You know, we cooperate with partners, and we are looking to extend the benefits of natural and cultural resource conservation throughout the country and the world. This is a photo here of Coronado National Memorial looking down into Sonora. So a little just kind of snapshot on the Park Service, you know, sort of footprint along the Borderlands, some of the sites and areas that we preserve, and also some of the programs that we have that are active that you might be less familiar with. You know, we have our Southeast Arizona group down here in Cochise County. That's made up of Coronado National Memorial, Fort Bowie National Historic Site, and Chiricahua National Monument. All of those, you know, wonderful places that in their own way certainly have perspective and share an interesting story about the history of the Borderlands and what makes it unique, either ecologically or historically. We also have the National Park Service oversees Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, incredible area where, you know, the northernmost extent of Organ Pipe, and just an important conservation area when it comes to the larger Sonoran Desert ecosystem, part of the World Biosphere Reserve in that part of the world, a sister park with Pinacate right across the Mexican border. We also have Tumacacori National Historic Park down here by Tubac. We also have the Anza National Historic Trail runs through there. And around Tucson, we have 2 units of Saguaro National Park, and then up by Casa Grande, Ruins National Monument, one of the first sites to be preserved under the Antiquities Act. You might be, you know, less familiar. I'm sure lots of folks have gone to those sites. You might be less familiar with the programs and partnerships that we run here, and I would encourage you to look into each of these separately. the Southwest Border Resource Protection Program is set up to both encourage collaboration across the border and to fund conservation projects, border parks. Certainly a interesting, somewhat less known program that's really relevant for our part of the world. Perhaps you've gotten some funding support or assistance from that program. Also, we have a program called with National Heritage Areas. Those are locally driven community projects. We have actually a new one right in our part of the world, the Santa Cruz Valley National Heritage Area. A few other programs here. The Sonoran Desert Inventory and Monitoring Program, headquartered in Tucson, does some excellent work to understand the natural resources and wildlife and flora and fauna of the Sonoran Desert, and actually work at a building here, the Western Archaeological Conservation Center. That's in downtown Tucson, just across the river and just north of Congress, where we curate and protect a lot of the cultural and historical objects from parks throughout the Intermountain area, all the way up to Glacier and back down. And then I work for a program called Rivers, Trails, and Conservation Assistance, and I'm going to dive in here a little bit to tell you about that program. RTCA is a program that's been around for over 30 years. We work nationally. We have folks working in every state to work with community groups, nonprofits, tribes, and states and local governments to do a variety of things. We help build healthy communities through parks, trails, and outdoor opportunities, meaning we help design, plan, really try to get folks through the project management cycle to say, hey, I want a new park. Let's make that a reality, a park or a trail. We also work on conservation issues, natural resource issues. We support projects that are aimed at building the next generation of youth stewards. An item here, we strengthen the organizational capacity of project partners. That might mean organizational development for a specific organization, or developing a collaborative of partners that set their sights on something. And then lastly, our projects don't necessarily need to involve a national park. About a third of our projects specifically involve a park unit like the ones I just mentioned. But we do work on connecting parks with their surrounding communities and partners. And there's some principles about how we work. I mean, essentially, we are a technical assistance program that is invited into communities to come work alongside them to do something that they want to do. It doesn't become a national park project. We are there to boost capacity. I liken it to a university extension program. It's taking all the things that the National Park Service does and bringing them to a local project. We really focus on collaboration, and like I said, by local invitation only. Our projects, and I'll discuss at the end of the presentation a little bit more nuts and bolts about how you'd get our help. But a common situation is, folks want to, let's say, build a park or establish a new open space area and create a conservation plan for it, but don't necessarily know how to do that. They reach out to our program and work through our process to bring us in, and we work alongside them as sort of a shared resource. Our assistance is tailored to each and every project, whether it's more technical in nature or more facilitation. It kind of depends on what folks need. And we strongly emphasize public engagement and inclusion. So we want to make sure that everybody in a community, all the stakeholders, folks who don't maybe typically have a voice at the table, everyone is involved to make sure that these projects can be as inclusive and fair and frankly effective as they can be. And we also focus on lasting tangible outcomes. We'd love to see a product at the end of our support. So we're going to go through now a series of examples and projects that I just think kind of give a flavor for some of the positive work that's going on along the borderlands, and provides a window into where our communities are at. And I think what we're seeing is really passionate people tackling a variety of things to get people outside effectively, to take care of what's out their back door. And despite a lot of the challenges that we might see and forces beyond our control as folks who are cared about conservation and outdoor recreation, there's a lot of success stories out there. So this is just a kind of a window and a snapshot into those. We'll start with the project in Nogales. This right here is Gardo Muñez. He's the founder and one of the driving forces behind the Zero Stress movement. Zero stress, kind of a Spanglish pun there, which I love. And they are a group in Nogales that works on both sides of the border to promote active living, walking, cycling, and has a strong youth component. And so they were looking to develop a new opportunity for folks to mountain bike in the city of Nogales that was easily accessible to people in the community. Just didn't have a lot of mountain biking opportunities specifically. Prior to this project, they'd been focused on street cycling. And I'm sure folks know some young folks that have just really gotten connected to the natural world through recreation, and that's a theme that runs through a lot of my work and our projects as a program is uh, getting people out and experiencing nature rather than just talking at them about it. So for this particular project, which I worked on, from late 2016 all the way up to the present, the idea was let's look at an existing flood control property in the Monte Carlo neighborhood, which is up in the northeast side of town, and develop a concept plan for how trails and public access could be integrated there. We wanted to also build volunteer capacity and know-how around trail maintenance and construction and development. And then we wanted to make sure that the zero waste trace movement, was connected with others in the community that also had that ability to sort of create that network of folks that could move it forward. And at the end of the day, make a public property available for the public. So this is the concept plan that we developed after some public engagement and discussions. This white boundary here is the outside of the project. Pretty limited, 15 acres, and just kind of it's fairly natural. It's got some mesquite, some grasslands there, some has a northerly aspect that has some little bit more verdant vegetation, and we kind of figure out what could be included here. You'll see this was designed. There's on the left side here, you can see it's accessible directly from the neighborhoods, backs up to these residences, and then this long straight north-south feature is the actual flood control structure itself. And so we worked with the city of Nogales and Zero Waste Trace to put this concept together with a perimeter trail and a variety of other features, as well as a mountain biking BMX skills area. We also included some other improvements in here, erosion control measures, native vegetation, using this as kind of a demonstration site for the surrounding community. So we worked with them. This is one of our very first work events down here in the bottom left. Brought in Mark Flint, a well-known trail designer, trail expert, to run a series of trainings, building retaining structures. How do you build a trail that sheds water effectively, that's going to hold up without much maintenance? Making sure that the trail avoided any sensitive vegetation or sites. There's also kind of a process of developing signage for that and helping people navigate that area. And folks just in the community just really stepped up. I mean, it was amazing to see families out there doing work. I take, after the planning phase, I take no credit for the amount of incredible grassroots support this project received, and was just sort of thrilled to watch it unfold. And late last December, there was a ribbon cutting for this project. You can see on the left here folks from the city and from the organization, the club. There's myself and Mark Flint, and in front of this incredible sculpture that one of the board members and really driving forces of Zero Waste Trace put together. They really turned this park into a public art facility, which wasn't part of the initial discussions and just developed organically. It's a wonderful thing. So here was the flyer here, and we were able to connect the project with a trail builder based in Tucson, Rob Bauer with Bauer Built, and they came in and did some pro bono work to do some shaping and sculpting of some of these dirt jumps that really are amazing skill building features for people getting into cycling. So it's really kind of the place. Hey, I got a bike for the first time. I want to take my kid there. It's a great place to build that experience, and also something you can ride to from your house. So just a really a great example of lots of folks coming together and working in collaboration to make something happen. So just proud that I was involved in this in any way, and shout out to Carlo and their organization for all the work they've done. Another project that I'm just wrapping up now that I think is so reflective of sort of the stories and the cultures and communities that we have along the borderlands. This one working with the International Sonoran Desert Alliance. And the goal here was, and the ask was for the Park Service to help them improve wayfinding and interpretation for visitors in the historic walkable town center of Ajo. And I'll get into Ajo in a second here. If you haven't been, just a fascinating, beautiful, vibrant community. And the intent with this was to create a series of signs and maps and interpretive waysides to enhance the sense of place, make sure people appreciated where they were, improve the connectivity between the points of interest there, improve safety, improve business opportunities, and at the end of it, come out with a plan that is the the Desert Alliance could kind of work through to achieve some of this. So here's some photos of Ajo. If you haven't been there, it's an amazing master planned historic community from 1917, traditional mining community that was, active mine for 70 years. It's been closed for over 30 years now, and has kind of entered a different phase as a community that celebrates the arts and local food and culture. But there's this grassy plaza in the middle and a series of incredible historic buildings there. And for many folks, they know it as just being on the way to Rocky Point. It's between Phoenix and Rocky Point, gets a lot of pass-through traffic, people going to Organ Pipe, Cactus National Monument. And so, part of it is, how do you capture those people who, are on the way and have something on their mind to get to the beach, and say, hey, let's stop and appreciate some of the amazing places and communities we have uh, in the U.S.-Mexico borderlands. And so that's a challenge that we all face. And I think Ajo, that challenge is distilled there. Just thousands and thousands of vehicles going through town. They might not even know that this amazing historical resource is there. So what we did was create a series of concepts for how to tell that story, how to capture folks that are stopping to use the restroom or get gas or grab a cup of coffee, and get them to stop and appreciate the resources there. So we worked with a local community working group. ISDA is amazing, and it's representative of the community, a tri-national board, folks from Mexico, folks from the Tanatam Nation, and the U.S. And so we really use their built-in network to think through this and build on previous work that Local First Arizona did when it came to establishing an identity and a brand for Ajo. And our job in the Park Service job was just to help the community think through a process of, what stories do you want to tell? Where do you want to send people? How do you get them from point A to point B? And so things like this page is a series of design standards for, how big are the signs? Where are they? What purpose do they serve? You can see there's kind of a mix here, the heritage of this sort of decorative wrought iron that's consistent with a lot of the buildings there in Ajo, and then this rock base that reflects sort of the mining history and heritage of the area. So you can kind of see this is the intent. We got some folks enjoying those. In this case, actually was working on this panel earlier this week. We got a local illustrator to sort of do a beautiful illustration that shows sort of the callouts. This is the Immaculate Conception Church here on the right, built by a very famous architect back in the 1920s. The Curley School here in the middle, and just help kind of tell the story of what's happening there in Ajo. I also want to mention quickly an event we had hosted there by ISDA. Just to let folks know, hey, if this is stuff you're interested in, there's always gatherings happening. We did do what was called a Borderlands Geotourism workshop, and that's actually how I met Alex with Border Community Alliance, or talked more with him, and led to this presentation and others. But here, I think I'm not going to read this to you, but there's some interesting. There's a community of people that exists around these concepts. I assume if you're watching this, you're one of them. So good to know you. Last project I want to highlight is, I think I pick it because it's representative of some of the opportunities and challenges we have with outdoor recreation here in Southern Arizona. This is on the Coronado National Forest, Redington Pass, Tanque Verde Falls area just outside of Tucson. And the role here for the Park Service was to work with an emerging nonprofit, Friends of Redington Pass, a citizens group, and the Coronado National Forest. And what we were looking to do is take some great work they had already done to develop a collaborative vision for the area and turn that into tangible outcomes. And so we wanted to boost the capacity of this new Friends group, pivot from planning to on-the-ground development, tackle some resource issues there. If you're not familiar with Tanque Verde Falls, it's a canyon area on the edge of Tucson that gets a lot of traffic, a lot of interest. There's some waterfalls, but it's also pretty dangerous. Over 30 people have died there over the past 30 years because of flash flooding and other similar events. And so there's some issues. It hasn't been invested in, and there's just limited ability from land managers to take care of every place, and they really need the support and buy-in of partners. And so kind of the outcome of this was, on the left here, was sort of a collaborative design process where we came up with a series of improved trailheads that gets folks off of the road, and then some trails that overlook a series of waterfalls, as opposed to folks traditionally kind of go to the bottom of the canyon, regardless of whether that's safe or not, and put themselves in harm's way. And so the intent here was, get folks out of the canyon, put them on sustainable trails where it's possible. Let folks come out. It's literally 10, 15 minutes from a lot of people's homes. Place to run, to walk, to decompress, to walk the dog, and look at some of this amazing scenery just on the north side of Saguaro National Park, the Rincon Mountain unit. So this was a really a wonderful collaborative process that the Forest Service is actually moving forward with. Did some scoping last year to define this project. So hopefully in a few years we'll see it improve Tanque Verde Falls, but there's been lots of work and momentum in that direction. So I want to pivot to, collaboration. We use that word a lot. I mean, there's a number of definitions out there. I think a lot of us know it when we see it. And I sort of define it as an honest, open process where we share some of the work, share some of the decision making, and work towards a common goal. And so I guess here's just some things that I guess I think make these successful, or that I take with me when I start a project. And the first one is, be invested. Come with your whole self. This is from the Ajo Memory Project, a very cool exhibit at a park in Ajo. And just this one little piece here, a tile, struck me. I am part of the Sonoran Desert. I think that's the mindset we all need to have when we go into these. Sometimes it can feel lengthy and laborious, these long processes and big meetings. Now they're all on Zoom, and it's hard to anchor yourself. And it's good to remind ourselves, hey, we are part of this landscape. We are stewards of this landscape. We share it with others. And so just being invested and willing to view yourself as part of something greater than yourself, I think is if you're there only to achieve your own organization's objectives or your personal objectives, I think that even though we all have those, I think it's important for us to have that level of buy-in. This is that same park in Ajo that tells that story. You can see this is the backside of the plaza here in beautiful murals. I would think folks who are tuning into something like the Borderlands Forum understand this, but respect for history and people. We live in a region that's a crossroads for a variety of people, and continues to be that, and will continue to be that, regardless of anything else that happens. And so you need to go into every room thinking, hey, I respect that people have worked before me. People are going to work after me. There's a history. Not everyone has been able to shape the reality that they want in an equal way. Some of us, some folks have had more, privilege in shaping that than others. And just coming into a room and understanding that it's about figuring out what role I can play in furthering that in a respectful way. And a lot of this has to do with building processes that are transparent, and sort of start with that grounding together. It's easy. We're all busy to jump to sort of the nuts and bolts and the to-do lists. And I think it's time well spent to sort of ground ourselves in where we live and who we are. I'm using Ajo pictures here, but this is a beautiful mural over in Ajo, pretty funky. Stay open-minded, get a bit weird. There's always a balance in all of these projects between, people not wanting to recreate what's been done and also moving things forward. And there's a nice tension there. We want to do what works, but we also want to be able to try some stuff that we really have no idea whether it's going to work. And that's okay. It's okay to have both of those, and different people, again, to have respect for your participants. Let's say you have a team of 5 or 10 people working on this. It's okay to have a mix. Some people, want to try wacky new stuff. Some people want to have a higher degree of confidence. Let's have a dialogue around that. But I think it's okay to get a bit weird sometimes. I think of all of us can be these eyeballs going over the desert, looking for cool opportunities. Get your mind open. Here's one that I think, honestly, especially in collaborative settings or partnership projects where like lots of people are coming to them with different levels of investment, different levels of availability. I think it's critical to be open and honest about what you think your role is and how much time and energy you have to devote to this. Again, many partnership projects are sort of by volunteer basis. Maybe there's some initial marching orders, but it takes a lot of initiative, right? It takes people raising their hands and saying, I'm willing to do that task. And I think it's just critical for, if you say you're going to do that task, make sure you're able to do that task. Um, and it's okay that we're all going to bring different things and contribute in different ways. But I think that it's, the collaborations that I see that are most effective is we have an open conversation and to say, hey, you say that you want to make this happen. How many volunteers do you think that you have that you know right now that are willing to, attend a stewardship event next weekend or in 2 months from now or whatever the case may be? I think it's okay when you're in a healthy partnership to ground yourselves in those realities. Part of it is coming together and again, being candid about what you have to bring to the table and what you can't. The last one here, relentless positivity, pretty apropos to the moment. We're going to be okay. It's going to be a hard period here. There's no doubt about that, but we're going to be okay. You could say that arguably at any point, but I think now especially true. I think you have to. Um, it's easy to generate a list of roadblocks and challenges and why stuff can't happen. And I'm a realist. It's important to have all that stuff in mind, but I think we have to have sort of that drive that says we're going to leave this better than we found it. And RTCA, I sort of have a little bit of a Hippocratic oath. First, do no harm. I try to take that with, but I judge my own performance and my role in these collaboratives of whether I left it a little better than I found it. So I think that kind of concludes the sort of perspective components and case study sharing part of this presentation. I'm going to transition to, if you're interested in getting National Park Service assistance and how that works. And so, again, we are a technical assistance program, meaning we help with your projects. We come in and work alongside you, and pretty much almost anyone can apply for RTCA assistance. Community groups, nonprofits, um, governments, federal agencies. And we do this a little bit like a grant program, but instead of direct funding, you get someone like myself, or we have another, Laura Bolyard is the other half of our RTCA office here in Arizona, great landscape architect and community organizer. You get our help for 1 to 2 years, and we award that on an annual basis through a competitive application process. Um, Generally, June 30th is that date. We're actually moving to a new date of the end of March every year to accept applications. Um, uh, and our and in the meantime, we'll be kind of accepting them on a rolling basis. So just to be clear, if your project, you say, oh, I'm not, doesn't involve saguaro or Anza Trail or anything like that, that's totally okay. We certainly like to have in our portfolio some projects that benefit national parks. In the case of Ajo, that's the Gateway Community to Oregon Pipe, but it's not a requirement. And again, we don't provide funding, but we do help you navigate the world of financial assistance. So there's an application form, looks like this on our website that hopefully BCA can share. We kind of pride ourselves on being, um, like I said, tailored to your project, pretty flexible. We will discuss and go back and forth what project might be a good fit for us. So there's some. That's why we strongly encourage reach out before applying. If we get kind of a cold application, we want to have a dialogue about how we can fit in. So with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up. There's my contact information there, my email address, and my direct telephone line. Just happy to talk with anyone who's looking to conserve the natural resources of the borderlands, get folks outside, and work together to do it. So with that, I think I'm gonna wrap it up and look forward to talking to you all on May 13th.